Support for Building Minnesota comes from the Minnesota chapter for the American Institute for Architects. For more information, go to aia-mn.org.
Welcome to the Building Minnesota podcast. I'm Todd Melby. In this podcast, I'll be talking with Jim Dayton of James Dayton Design in Minneapolis. Before opening his own firm, Dayton worked for Meyer, Shearer & Rockcastle in Minneapolis and Frank Gehry & Associates in Santa Monica, California. In 2005, he won the AIA Minnesota Honor Award for his work on the MacPhail Center for the Arts. His firm has also designed the Bookman Lofts and Bookman Stacks in the Warehouse District of Minneapolis, and also the Portland condos in the Riverfront District of Minneapolis. Those condos haven't been built yet because of the lag in the condo market. In this podcast, we'll be talking with Jim about MacPhail Center for Music, which is under construction in the Riverfront District in Minneapolis and is due to open in January of 2008. So here we go, a conversation with Jim Dayton of James Dayton Design.
Well, the basic diagram of the building, which I hope will be evident to even the quickest of pedestrians walking by or someone driving by, but the basic diagram is the 6-story tower to the back of the site, clad in zinc panels, 6 stories, and it's about 85% of the bulk of the building. It's all of the individual teaching studios, 57 teaching studios, which cover all the different instruments. The third floor is the administration, so the full office complex for the building is on the third floor. The early childhood suites are on the ground floor. The top bit of glass on the corner that you can see is the rock, jazz, and percussion studio, which is pretty cool, a little like a garage band up there. Excellent. On the top floor. That's really the bulk of the organization, and it's also really what I thought of as the nuts and bolts part of it. It's where the day-to-day teaching goes on in this big, what we call the tower. And that then in turn serves as the backdrop and almost like a curtain opening up for the performance hall, which is the second part of the diagram.
Right. And now the tower isn't perpendicular to the ground in some places. It curves slightly.
Yeah, I think architecture should be fun. I think it should be sculptural and organic and dynamic, and in some ways analogous to music, maybe.
Have you ever worked on a music building before?
I worked in Los Angeles after I graduated from University of Virginia in 1991. I went to work for Frank Gehry in Santa Monica and worked there from 91 to 96 and spent all 5 years working on the Disney Hall in LA, which is now the home for the Los Angeles Philharmonic.
So what did you learn on Disney that you've applied here?
Well, I think one of the things is that this building, it's hard to draw an analogy. I'm not trying to suggest that this is a Disney Hall, maybe, or certainly that I'm Frank Gehry. So to take an organization like MacPhail, and their current building is very insulated. It's very inward, introspective. Looks like an office building. You drive by and you may or may not know what's going on inside. And I think something like MacPhail should be about the city, should be engaged with the city, and the city should be engaged with MacPhail. And so this building is about turning the organization inside out in a way, kind of cracking the egg open and letting the dialogue between the music and the people be energized and be engaged in that way, kind of a civic dialogue. So you'll see that the building, we have the 6-story teaching tower to the back side of the site, clad in zinc panels, and that serves as a backdrop to the Corten box, which is brought out to the front of the site, which is the performance hall.
What was the word that you used to describe the jutting box, or did you say core?
It's Corten steel.
Is that what we're looking at now?
That's what looks like bare, kind of raw steel at the moment on the performance hall is Corten, and it's a proprietary alloy that is predominantly steel, but it has the ability to oxidize, rust, basically, and then seal itself. So it becomes this rich, warm chocolate, kind of like a chocolate truffle color. and texture, and then stops. The oxidation stops and becomes a self-protecting layer.
You've been listening to a conversation with Jim Dayton of James Dayton Design in Minneapolis. I'm Todd Melby. Join us next time.
Keep up to date on Minnesota architecture. Read the Building Minnesota blog. It's available at buildingminnesota.blogspot.com. That's the Building Minnesota blog at buildingminnesota.blogspot.com.